Good morning. Welcome once again to your Wednesday or midweek uplift from John Wesley United Methodist Church in Victoria, Texas. We're glad to welcome you this morning. Hope you're doing well. Each week we come at 7 in the morning on Wednesday, and we have our church members of our church family share just a word of encouragement, a word of uplifting for you. Just kind of get over the middle of the week and through the weekend. So this morning we have Bob Armour to come and share a few words with us. So let's take a few moments, just kind of sit back, relax, and hear what Bob has to share with us.
Preached a fine sermon on reconciliation. And I think he focused primarily on the way we reconcile ourselves to God. He covered other things, but that seemed to be the center of what he was talking about. And I got to thinking about it a lot. And as I walked out, I told him a story that is my favorite in terms of reconciliation. And he said, well, you got to repeat that again for other people, and that's why we're here this day. But he focused primarily on God. I want to take that to the next shift, though. To shift it to the way you and I reconcile with each other. Now, reconciliation means that we come to deal with the conflicts in our lives. We reconcile the various difficulties that we have with each other or with God. We resolve the conflicts in our lives, and there are a lot of them. This experience that Carl was talking about, the reconciliation with God, gives us the wherewithal to deal with the conflicts in our lives. It prepares us for the opportunities to deal with conflicts within a marriage or within a congregation or within a political party or within a family, whatever the conflicts may be. But if we are able to take what we learn from our resolution with God, we can then apply what we know to the way we relate to other people in our lives. Now, the primary means of instruction is right here. It's in the Bible. The stories here, the letters here, the lectures here, the history here, the literature here. This gives us the insight that we need to deal with other folks, but that's not the only way we learn. We learn by our relationship with other people, our pastor, our spouse, our friends. But we also learn from history. We also learn from studying what happens in other conflicts, in other places, at other times. And if we study all of this and pull it all together, we've got the wherewithal to reconcile ourselves within whatever conflict we might have. I got to thinking about this a lot, thanks to Carl. And I was wondering, what is it that we learn? What do we take from our experience in reconciling with God? And I decided that could be an hour lecture or a sermon unto itself. So I'm not going to elaborate on anything, but a few of the words that came to my mind that you might wrestle with a little bit and see if they help. But what do we get? We get wisdom. We get empathy. We get compassion. We get humility. We get intestinal fortitude. That's a word my father used to use because he didn't like the word guts. But you understand what I'm getting at. There's something inside you that gives you strength so that you can assert yourselves to other people. We get love and concern for other people. We get gravitas, a sense of seriousness about what we're doing. And maybe above all, we get a knowledge of good and bad. We come to understand that there is evil in the world. There is bad within us, but there's also good. And we need to be able to tell the difference between the two. If we pull all of this together, I think we can create the opportunity to deal with the conflicts in our lives. The story that I wanted to tell you deals with the city of Coventry in England. It's a city up in the Midlands. At the time of our story, it had a little over 200,000 people in it. 14th of November, 1940. I would have been 8 months old at the time of this story. Adolf Hitler sent his Luftwaffe to bomb Coventry. It was an industrial city. It specialized in vehicles, automobiles, and so forth. And he knew that it created weapons of war. And so he sent his Blitzkrieg in to bomb this city. And on the night of the 14th and on into the 15th, he leveled the city. It did dreadful things to Coventry. 4,300 homes were destroyed. 5,068 citizens were killed. The factories surrounding the city were over 75% destroyed. The city's center, downtown Coventry, was wiped out. Would have been horrible. It's hard for us to think of anything in our lives that's as bad as that. Although I've been thinking a lot about the fires out in California right now, and people standing there watching their houses consumed by a horrible fire, by thousands and thousands of acres of land destroyed just in a matter of a few minutes. That's the closest thing that I could think of right now for it. But the unrest that's in some of our cities, the destruction that we see in storefronts and office buildings and government buildings, and might have something that's similar. But to know that your friends have been killed, it would hurt awfully. And yet the next morning, the 15th of November, the rector of the cathedral led his small congregation out of their suburban area into the cathedral itself. This had been a 14th century cathedral, a beautiful old building, and the bombs had destroyed it. There was nothing left but one wall and a little bit of a couple of other walls and a pile of rubble right in the middle where the whole building had collapsed into itself. Try to imagine what it would be like if John Wesley's church were burned and destroyed. The rector, the leading pastor of the congregation, a man by the name of Richard Howard, he led this congregation out into the ruins, which must have still been smoldering, and dust must have been coming out, and they probably were still putting out some fires. And he brought his folks together and he said, we need to think seriously about what it means to be Christians at this moment. And that congregation then committed itself to two things. First, it committed to rebuild the cathedral. And then second, it committed to a new ministry. Now, they did rebuild the cathedral in about 6 years. They created what I think of as one of the most beautiful modern buildings in the world. The people of England voted as on their favorite modern structures not too many months ago, and voted this cathedral number 1. It's a magnificent place. It's built right next to the ruins of the old cathedral. They cleaned them up and took out the rubble, planted some grass in there. It's beautiful. But it's still a burned out cathedral, a destroyed mess. And at one end of it, into the woodwork that's there, they carved the message, the prayer, God forgive. Just 2 words, God forgive. And the people there followed through on this mission, which must have been so hard to do. I have a hard time imagining what it would be like to say to the people who just destroyed your city, we forgive you. We want to reach out a hand of fellowship to you. We want to reach out a hand of creativity. And so the congregation established a ministry. Today they have a canon that is devoted to peace and reconciliation. This canon has led the congregation in a variety of ways through the years. They have symbols of peace and reconciliation. The new cathedral is a symbol of it. They've got crosses made from the wood that they salvaged from the destruction. They've got stained glass that all they could do was take bits and pieces of glass that had been destroyed and put it into a new window. They've got nails where they took the nails out of the old building and turned it into crosses. But most significantly, they have created a means of reaching out to help with peace and reconciliation around the world. They've got sister organizations in other churches and other community centers in different places, different countries that have joined in this ministry. They immediately reached out to Germany and expressed forgiveness right there. But they've extended that They've gone into South Africa. They've gone into Northern Ireland. They've gone into the Middle East. And all of that has been done in the ministry of reconciliation, finding ways to forgive other people, to forgive yourself. And that leads us to where we are today. We've got a world that is full of conflict. We've got a country that's full of conflict right now, with an election coming up and riots in the street and protests in the various cities around the country. It goes on and on. And the question really is, how do we take what we know about reconciling with God and turn that into a way of dealing with the people around us? We ask God's blessing on that. We ask God's forgiveness of our inadequacies. And we ask God's blessing on us and our congregation. We ask all of this in the name of the one whose life is the symbol of reconciliation. Amen.